If you're thinking about restoring a classic car, there are a few critical steps you need to consider before beginning your restoration. Today, I'm going to share with you 10 critical things that will make or break your classic car restoration. Restoring a classic car sounds simple. You tear it down, you rebuild it, then you enjoy it. Well, that's exactly what I thought before I started the restoration on my 1965 GTO. But what nobody told me was how easy it is to get one small decision wrong, and then suddenly you're wasting time, you're burning through money that you hadn't budgeted, and you're redoing work that you had already done once. I made some of those mistakes. In fact, more than just a couple. Some of them were expensive. They were frustrating. And when you package that all together, sometimes it can make you question whether you want to continue with the project or not. So anyways, in this video, I'm breaking down 10 things that will either make or break your classic car restoration. The stuff most people don't realize until it's too late. If you're in the middle of a build or thinking about starting one, this could save you a lot of time, frustration, and potentially money. And it'll certainly save you some headaches. Let's get into it. Okay, the first thing that could make or break your restoration really happens before you actually begin the restoration, and that's when you buy the car. When I bought my GTO, I missed a lot of things, and mainly the things I missed were the condition of the body in terms of rust. There was a whole lot of rust. So the point with this one is examine the car, and this, I know I can hear what you're going to say, and I agree with you. Is that, yeah, this is what you're saying is painfully obvious, and it is. But in the heat of the moment, in the excitement, that you can get kind of caught up in it. Slow down, take a step back, really critically examine the vehicle before you buy it, because the most money that you'll save is right at the very beginning if you buy something that is in better condition versus something that's in worse condition. And in my case, it looked like it was in good condition, but it really was in much worse condition than what I had initially thought. And had I examined the car just a little bit more thoroughly, I would have perhaps noticed some of these issues that I missed in my excitement. And had I done that, could have potentially saved me literally thousands of dollars and many hundreds of man hours. So that's the first one to consider. Check the car out really good before you buy it. Okay, so you've bought your dream car. It's going to be a great project. You're enthusiastic and excited. The first thing you want to do when you get the thing home before you start tearing it apart or doing anything with it is do a good walk-around inspection of the vehicle. Thoroughly examine the car. Not just the stuff that's painfully visible or obvious just by doing a walk around on it. If you have the luxury like I did where I have a lift, put it up on the lift, get a bunch of bright lights, take a look at it, wiggle every part, look at all kinds of stuff, everything that you possibly can, and document the condition of the car before you start disassembling it. So having a journal or something like that where you have made notes on the condition of the car and potentially trouble areas that maybe you didn't know about initially will actually help you out. Because what that will do is that will help you to determine a flight plan, if you will, for the car as far as what area do you want to concentrate on first, and that will help you determine, how you're going to take and approach the disassembly of the car. So inspect, analyze, and thoroughly plan the project before disassembly is what I have in my notes. And doing that will certainly save you some time, but it'll also help you to develop a strategy for how best to approach the disassembly. All right, the third thing that could make or break your restoration is as you begin the disassembly process, take photos of everything. Take photos of the components before you begin the disassembly, and then perhaps sequentially as you start taking the parts off of the car. A photo journal I found, and I did this myself, shop manuals are great, and there's no replacement for them. You need good shop manuals, but having a photo journal of the disassembly process of the car will really help you to um, understand the reassembly process once you get to the stage where you're doing the reassembly. So for me, it took me almost 6 years to do the reassembly in this car because I didn't work on it every day. Well, from things that I took apart at the beginning of the restoration, if I didn't have that photo journal to kind of help guide me back through the reassembly process, it would have made things a whole lot more difficult. So step 3, create a good photo journal and document everything with pictures. Okay, the 4th thing that could make or break your restoration is to create a journal and keep detailed notes of the disassembly, sequence of parts removal, everything like that. And it doesn't have to be terribly complex. I just used a spiral notebook like this one, and as I was taking the car apart, as I learned key things about the disassembly, I made a written note in my notebook. I later transcribed it on my computer to have an electronic copy of it. But doing that, keeping a handwritten journal as you do the disassembly, that along with the photo journal that you make really work well together to create a complete picture that, a year later or 2 years later or however long it takes you to finish the restoration and then begin reassembly, it will really help you and will go a long way to guiding you back through the reassembly process. And one final thought about keeping written notes in a notebook like this that will really, really help you. As you do the disassembly of the car, you're obviously going to take and evaluate the condition of the parts that you're taking off. You'll make a decision right there. You'll say, oh, this looks pretty good. I could probably reuse this, or this looks really bad. This is going to have to be something that I replace. If you keep a good written notes about the condition of the components as you're pulling them off the car, it will really help you when it comes time to ordering replacement parts, because you really don't want to order parts that you don't need. So anyways, I really highly recommend a written journal to go along with your photo journal. The 5th thing that might make or break your restoration, and this goes along with the photo journal and also with the handwritten journal, and this is also something that I did, is I made a video diary of the disassembly of the car and the work that I was doing at that time. At that time, I wasn't thinking about making YouTube videos. I did it solely to have a means to remember critical aspects of disassembly that I could use during the reassembly process. So the kind of the 3-level thing, the photos, the written notes, and then videos where I actually narrated what I was doing really helped me in the end when it came time for the reassembly. So that's something else you might want to consider. The 6th item that might make or break your restoration is parts inventory. As you begin disassembly, it's a good idea to take and come up with a method of tagging and bagging parts, particularly small hardware like these screws. And this happens to be for the driver's rear quarter window felt and weather stripping. But keeping your hardware and small parts in particular organized and labeled so that you know what they are later will really go a long way to making the reassembly very easy. So whether you do kind of what I did, just simply with Ziploc bags and a label maker, but I would certainly recommend that you find a way to neatly organize and catalog all of your parts, particularly the small parts. Number 7 on my list is organize a storage system for storing every part that you remove from the car, even the ones that you don't plan to reuse. So crude as it may seem, this is my storage system. Now, it does not look very well organized right now. The restoration is done, and so it's kind of just a collecting place for junk. But The reason I think it's important to uh, at least initially save all the parts that you take off the car is that you might need that information for part of the reassembly. And a good example of that, this rat's nest down here on this bottom shelf, is the wiring harness. And so even with a good wiring diagram, it was nice to have the original harness to look at to make sure that I was um, getting everything matched correctly once I started installing the new wire harness in the car. So anyways, I used these shelves that I just bought at the home center, and I stored all of my old parts on there. Some of the bigger items like the radiator and the fuel tank and things like that, which I ended up replacing. I didn't store on the shelves. I put those over in the corner. When I started ordering new parts, I didn't mix the new parts in with the old. I built a shelf above it where I stored new parts, and you can see some boxes up there. We're going to talk about those boxes in a minute. All right, the eighth thing on our list that will either make or break your restoration has to do with parts ordering. And this may seem painfully obvious, but I think it's worth mentioning anyway. It's important as you begin to order parts for your car that you compare and contrast different parts from different suppliers to get a really good idea not only of price, but mainly for shipping fees. And I found that not all companies charge the same thing for shipping. One of the major sources for parts that I used for my GTO's restoration is actually on the West Coast. It's in California. And their shipping costs were really, really expensive. And early on, it was an easy go-to source for me because they had a great catalog of parts. Their parts were really good. They had a good reputation. But every time I ordered something, the shipping costs just really kept adding up and adding up and adding up. And over time, I discovered, hey, let's take a look around a little bit, see what I can buy, maybe buy locally, which I did a lot of. But for things that I could not get locally, I found other companies that had the same part for close to the same price that either had free shipping or much lower shipping costs. So it pays to take and look around for that. It would also be wise, and I recommend that you find a way to organize your parts order forms. And I kept a 3-ring binder full of everything that I ordered for the car. And what that allowed me to do was, because there were times when I would take and order a part that I did not need immediately, but I was going to need, say, in 3 months from now or something like that. And it's really easy, particularly if you're ordering a lot of parts for a complete restoration like I was doing, to kind of get lost in what part have I ordered and what do I still need and those type of things. And you don't want to duplicate your parts. And I actually made that mistake on a couple of different occasions because I would bundle stuff. And I would buy, say, like an interior kit. And the interior kit would have a long list of parts that came in that kit. The kit would come in. Maybe some of it was back ordered. So it wasn't necessarily a complete kit. And months down the road, I'd say, all right, I'm ready to take and start assembly of this particular section of the car. And I would think, oh, shucks, I don't have a whatever. Well, I'm going to give you an example of some of the things that I actually double ordered parts for. Okay, these are 3 items that I actually double ordered, and there's more. So one example of this, these are the water shields for the door and for the quarter windows. The door sills right here, 2 of those in there, brand new, didn't need them, I already had a set. And this is the headliner trim for the up at the windshield. And so I ended up double ordering all of those parts. Well, when you order things in a kit, it gets really difficult to take in return. So particularly if, when you ordered the part, 6 months had gone by and then you want to return stuff, it just makes it more difficult. So that's why having a good parts inventory and cataloging system could potentially save you some money. And another good example of that, we'll go back up to my storage area up here. These are interior pieces that were double ordered. Well, with the exception of one item up there, those were all double ordered items. And like under carpet insulation was one of those things that came as part of a kit that I had forgotten about when I first ordered the interior kit, and I ended up buying it again. And in that particular case, it was more than a year when I first ordered the part to when I actually got around to using it. And so I ended up with more than what I really needed, and it ended up costing me money. And when you add all of those things up, it can add up to a lot of money. All right, number 9 on our list is to maintain a comprehensive library of shop manuals. All right, this is my library of shop manuals. And it's not only shop manuals, but I keep parts catalogs in here as well. So everything that's GTO related, and I've got some other shop manuals that I've acquired over the years for other cars that I've owned, but to have a comprehensive library of shop manuals is really, really critical. I was fortunate for the GTO that not only did I have paper manuals, which I prefer paper manuals over electronic ones, to be honest with you, but whether it's an electronic copy of the shop manual or a paper copy, it's critical to take and have those books in your possession that you can reference throughout the restoration. Without it, you actually could be very lost. And with certain very critical items, data like torque specifications and things like that, that you really don't find anywhere else, it's really important to have that reference. So good library of shop manuals is critical to any restoration. All right, last but certainly not least on our list of 10 things that will potentially make or break your restoration has to do with tools. And I'm talking, in this particular case, specifically specialty tools. Now, whether you purchase your tools or in a lot of cases you can rent them from different auto parts stores, has a tool rental program. Whatever way you decide to go, you're going to need to consider which specialty tools you're going to need. And so I've got a few examples here, some that don't immediately come to mind. This is an extraction tool for flywheel pilot bearing. Handy to have. Ball joint tool. This is a spring compressor that worked really, really well for compressing the front coil springs on the GTO. And then also, ball joint tools. You're going to need to take and press out and press in, or press out old ball joints and stuff potentially. Anyways, ball joint removal tool. You're gonna probably need something like that. So anyway, those are just a few things to consider that probably aren't in your shop unless you do this stuff all the time. Then maybe you would have it. But for a DIYer like myself, these were all things that I didn't initially consider that were essentially revealed to me over time as I began work on stuff. So a little bit of advanced thinking about these things will allow you to take and plan in advance to get the tools that you need at the right time to do the job. Okay, those are the 10 things that will either make or break your classic car restoration. If this saves you time, money, or massive headache, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I'm this close, only 37 subscribers away from 1,000. And that milestone actually matters more than you think for growing this channel and keeping these builds going. If you've been watching and getting value but haven't subscribed yet, perhaps now's the time. And if you're working on your own project, please tell us about it in the comments. I read every comment and I want to hear what you're building, what's working well for you and what's been a struggle. In upcoming videos, we're going to dive into some simple hacks that will help you level up your workshop, offer you some tips on and must-have tools, and a whole lot more. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.